Hi and welcome to another episode of Top Volts, and today we're going to be looking at the Austin Mini Cooper. This is the C76, first released in 1965 on their 6th edition catalogue, and these are the front wheel drive Minis, which is a bit unusual. All the other Minis that they made were rear wheel drive, but on this model they're front wheel drive, and it actually works pretty well. There's a little weight in the front of the Mini to keep the contacts down and keep the weight on the front wheels. But overall, they're a neat little model, really. It's and this one is came in a set of 1 of 2, and it runs which is technically a junior Formula One Formula engine in reverse. So it runs the same gearbox up the front. So what I'll do is I'll remove this cover plate, which just covers the gears at the front. So it just clicks straight onto the shaft, onto the drive shaft. So we just ease that off either side, and that's all that is. We'll put that to one side, and as you can see, it literally is a junior Formula engine. On this one, the brushes, they look to be quite clean, but we may give that just a little spruce up, I think, just a tiny little clean. The gears and the pinion, that all looks good. The soldered joints on this, where you can see the guide sticks out the front of the car, and the braids come across the top. And what they do is there's 2 brass tabs that run right down to this point here, from that one all the way through to this point here. So what you've got is 2 brass strips running under that motor, which are going to this guide. As you can see, there's a bit of a spring to it because they're directly connected to those 2 brass tabs, and in turn the connection to the motor runs in reverse to the back of the car, in the exact same way a junior Formula would be connected up. So we'll release the motor out of this to give it a little bit of a clean and just inspect the car overall. So what I tend to do first is remove the body shell, and inside here you've got 2 catches, and also where the number plate would be located, that's the other one. So you can pop the backs out on these and release it, but I find it easier just to release a catch either side and then ease that out. So we just release that a bit on that side. Perfect. And that should just come out. Okay, I'm going to put the body shell to one side. And now we've got the inside of the car, which also acts as a chassis. It holds all the mechanisms all onto one sort of tidy location, which works great. So there's the 2 brass tabs, as you can see, holds that guide in place. So what we'll do is we'll just release the motor from the back. And that should enable us to release. So placing your fingers quite close to the guides, just pull it to one side and that side. What you want to try and do is minimize the stress that you put actually on the frame and on the chassis, because they can be quite brittle at times. Just put its tyre back on, and there you can see the brass tabs running down the centre. And we may just give this a little brush first. An old shaving brush works perfectly for these because you get a good bit of coverage, but it's also quite soft. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just release the brushes. So you have the springs on the side. So if you place your fingers over the brushes either side, release the spring on both sides, and this will allow you to remove the brushes. So let's take that spring away. There you go, just put it under there for a moment. And we should be able to slide these brushes out. One feels a little bit stiff. Just ease that one out of there. That one out of there. So put one brush there. So just holding one there. Sometimes can be a little bit stubborn. Just making sure we carefully remove that, because we don't want to damage the carbon that's on the end of the brush. Okay, so once the brushes are removed, we can see that they are quite dirty. So we're going to give them just a very light clean, just to remove some of this grime that's on there, which looks to be a mixture of oil and carbon mix. Yeah, they just could do it with a very light clean. So we'll get a little bit of alcohol. And a cotton wool bud. Let's just give that a light clean. And this is fairly routine maintenance, really. You want to kind of get yourself used to doing that with these old cars, because they really benefit from it, from just using it and then giving it a clean and oil, and just like a regular, real basic service. Get yourself familiar with the car as well, and it will just improve the overall running. You can see that's quite dirty in there, so let's use a little bit more. Okay, that's come up very clean. That's good. Okay, that's brilliant. And whilst we've got the motor out, we give it a very light oil. These little motors really don't need a lot, just the tiniest little drop at the back there, just to allow it to soak in onto the spine, and another one right at the front, being careful not to get it on the contact. And that already runs very, very smooth. That's great. So we'll now place the brushes back in. So what we want is our spring. We'll place the spring back around that and back into the groove, because there's a slot just on the other side which holds that spring in just very snug. Place the bottom one on first. Just slide that in there. Put the spring under there and push down on that one, and that will hold that brush in place. And you take your other brush, and place that back in. let go of that spring. Now that is holding the brushes back into place. So our next job is to reinstate the connection to this brush. So what we have is a sleeve over the spring, which you have here. And what you need to do is slide that over that sleeve, which is very hard to show you what I'm doing. What I hope to do is show you after I've got that. So you can see there, so this side of the spring holds that brush in place, which in turn mates the connection to the opposite side, which goes to the other braid. And this one with the sleeve, which stops the arc in between the two, mates the connection to the other braid. You can see that sits very snug against that spring. Okay, so let's place the motor back in. So you've got the two pivot points here, so place those back in first, and that will allow you to line up the rear axle. But place your fingers at the back, so you don't put, because if you place it here, you could snap the chassis. So if you place it directly at the back and give a gentle push, now that's back into place. That's perfect. So now we reinstate the body shell. So at the back where the number plate would go, slide that into there, just so you can see it's made into the contact. And then once again, at the two connection points, very gently just push them back into place. There you go. There's the two clicks. And now that means it's all back together and it's sturdy. So the only thing left to do is to put the cover, the protective cover, over the front gears. And that clicks literally straight over the axle, just like that, and it's on there perfectly. So we just give those brushes just a quick press. Okay, just make sure all the wires are recessed and not catch anything. Brilliant. So that's all back together. So next thing is to do is we'll just run it up and let those brushes reseat themselves. Okay, so we're going to start the volts low and just allow those brushes to reseat themselves, and then we'll slowly increase the revs, the volts, sorry. What I'm having to do in this, because it's front wheel drive and it's not so easy just to lift the back wheels up, I just pull the braids a little bit forward just to make connection, and just line those up, and then I'll slightly lift the front wheels, and I'll just bring the volts in. Okay, they come on very easy. And I'll slowly increase the volts. And that's working perfectly. It's a very quiet motor. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you've enjoyed it and taken some of the tips, and hopefully some of the tips of use. As always, any comments you've got on this car or advice you would like to give or tips to myself and others, please leave them in the comments section, and it would be very helpful to myself. And I know that it would be helpful to others as well. But thank you very much, and I will see you at the next one.